Finance Minister Bill Morneau set up the Advisory Council on Economic Growth with a team of economic advisors to help steer economic growth in Canada. Ken Courtis is one of those advisors. He's also the chairman of Starford Investment Holdings and is also the former vice chairman of Goldman Sachs Asia. And he joins us now on the phone from Asia. Ken, great to be able to be with you today. Thank you very much for joining us. And let me first ask, as an advisor to Bill Morneau, did the Economic Council discuss at all a possible Trump victory, and what would it mean for your strategy?
Broadly, the Council, Catherine, talked about big issues, international issues, the change of the international environment. But that's not the focus of what we've talked about. We've talked about big things that we could do to change the domestic economy to produce a faster growing, a stronger Canadian economy. And that, in some ways, is part of the fundamental message that elected Donald Trump.
What changes, though, in terms of Canada's economic outlook with the Trump victory? What would you expect to take place in the United States, and how would that transcend to economic growth here in Canada?
Let's think very quickly, Catherine, through the 5 or 6, 7, 8 key points of what the economic program of the Trump administration would look like. They say they're going to axe or chop back quite a bit Dodd-Frank. So that's going to change quite a bit the financial sector. It'll mean that if that actually happens, that banks will have to hold less capital, and therefore they're getting greater returns on a smaller amount of capital. And I think that's why you've seen the boom ahead today of financial stocks on the New York markets. He said he's going to take a knife to Obamacare, and that obviously is going to be very positive for the drug industry, and their shares are moving today. He says broadly, without being very specific, that he's going to chop back regulation that he argued, and many in the corporate sector have argued, has been one of the main impediments to increasing capital investment. And as you know, and as we've talked about many times, capital investment has been very weak since the Bush bubble popped way back in the mid-2008-9. And if regulation is an issue and he chops it back, then we should see a surge in capital investment, particularly if he links that to what he's promised to do, and that is a one-time very minimum tax on the repatriation of the hundreds of billions of dollars that U.S. companies have kept abroad because they want to avoid double taxation. He says he's going to dope infrastructure investment. There's talk in his economic team of spending up to 1% a year of U.S. GDP over 10 years. That would make the infrastructure plans of the Canadian government look a little bit modest in comparison. So if you put all of that together, that would, and it works, it would mean we're going to get, at least in the midterm, a much stronger U.S. economy. And given that we ride on the back of the U.S. economy to a large extent, that would all spill over into Canada. One area that I think is more problematic, he's been adamant in saying that he's not going to adopt TPP and he's going to drop it. I think the Trudeau government has been very smart in not putting TPP at the in front of Parliament and waiting to see how the U.S. is going to make a decision on that. And I think now it's not going to go ahead, and it was probably, in that perspective, even smarter that the Canadian government has announced that they've joined the Asian Investment Infrastructure Bank and will start trade negotiations with China. I think also you will see now support for the Keystone Pipeline, which will be good for the energy patch in Western Canada. And more generally, I think that we'll see regulation cut off, reduced in the energy sector in the U.S. So I think from the economic perspective, notwithstanding maybe some renegotiation around NAFTA, I think that we're probably going to benefit a lot from this.
That's very interesting, Ken. We appreciate your views as always. Great to be able to speak to you from Asia today. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Thank you.